Hello, this is Doug Brunke, and today I am again with Lee Benson, CEO of Able Aerospace, Able Engineering, and Execute to Win, ETW. Lee, good morning.
Good morning, Doug.
Congratulations again on your success. You have really spent not just time on being very successful growing nationally, but also internationally, and that's why you're here today. Today we've got a little bit of a delicate conversation because you're in a supply chain like many aerospace companies and quite frankly many companies around the world, and there's a kind of a balance between what you're doing and the strength that you portray within that supply chain and other players within the supply chain. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that because one of the things that you've done so successfully is be strong, have a strategic plan, think ahead. Think about exporting, think about different markets, and probably not as many aerospace companies, certainly here in the U.S., are doing that as successfully as you are. And so within that framework of the supply chain, we wanted to talk a little bit more about how you've been successful, how you've been able to balance that. Because clearly you're selling to some of the biggest companies in the world, and they're mission critical parts. Could you explain a little bit more about how Able fits into that overall supply chain?
Yeah, I would start out by saying that the closer you can get to the end user, the better chance you have to have significantly larger gross profit margins, better success, and all that. The further away from that you are, the more commoditized you are, the lower the margins are, the much more difficult it is, to have a successful business that you can grow over time. If I back up to our beginnings, when I bought the company in '93, we were a one-process company. We had an electroplating process we provided to a larger OEM here in the Phoenix area. And for example, we would get a turbine engine shaft in from this particular customer. We would put some metal on one of the bearing journals to repair it. We would charge them $300 for that work if we were lucky, and there were other competitors around town trying to drive it down to $200. Well, this shaft was sent in from one of their large airline customers. We send it back to them, they grind it, inspect it, and then they sell that repair to the airline for $10,000 or more. And so I got the idea early on that wouldn't it be great to go directly to the aircraft operators? We could offer the same repair for half the price. That would allow us to buy the equipment to do the grinding, machining, inspection, whatever else we needed to do, and we could add that over time. Our customers would be incredibly happy with that because they would save 50% over what they're used to paying. And in a way, even though some of the OEMs won't like it because they would rather sell a new part or sell a repair themselves, it forces them to be leaner, meaner, more competitive. I mean, this really is the nature of free market capitalism, to where it drives better and better value for our collective customers around the world. And there's always a way to work with the OEMs. Even today, we have several of the OEMs as large customers of ours. But wherever we possibly can, we try to go to the end user. In our case, it's aircraft operators directly around the world. Bigger opportunities for margins, growth opportunities for all the employees.
So you've given a lot of thought to that, and you must have mapped out then what those supply chains are, not just what they are in the U.S., but around the world.
We have. We try to, again, get right to the end user. And it's a pretty tough game. I've had over the years, literally hundreds of friends with machine shops and other types of organizations providing products and services directly to OEMs. There could be a shift in the market. There could be a shift in their supply chain philosophy. And overnight, these $5 to $20 million businesses go out of business because they're relying on 1, 2, or 3 large clients. Another important thing here is to make sure that you've got enough breadth and depth to your customers. We started out, when I bought the company in 1993, we only had one customer, and they cut us off overnight, and that gave me the opportunity to buy the company. And I said, we're never going to make that mistake again. And now we have 1,000 customers in 60 countries around the world. No one customer has more than 5% of our business. And so we could lose the top 2, 3, or 4 clients that we have, and it wouldn't put anybody's jobs in jeopardy. We wouldn't like it, but we would still be here and moving forward.
Especially in those early days, how did you build credibility within that supply chain when you were a relatively small player? You've grown obviously, and so you've got a lot more power within the chain. But how did you evolve from someone, as you described, really just selling one part within the chain now to really thinking upstream, moving upstream, and now being a bigger player?
Yeah, I hear from a lot of folks that run smaller businesses that say this is just the way it is. We don't have the resources. We can't be taken serious by the larger companies. It's too hard to break through. And I say, you know what? That's just crazy, because if you have a well-conceived plan and a good strategy to move in that direction, you can always take steps in the right direction. In fact, wherever you're at, you can always see the next 2 or 3 steps to take to move to where you want to go. Our early plan that we put together, and I was wrong, I believe, in some of our assumptions, but our plan played out beautifully, was we need to get to aircraft operators where where they're small enough to where saving $1,000 is a big deal to them. So our strategy was, let's build up to $5 million in work for small helicopter operators, because saving $1,000 is a big deal to them. Once we get to $5 million, then we can start developing products for the larger fixed-wing operators like United Airlines, for example. They would take us a little bit more serious at that point, and we blew through our plan. We got to the $5 million, then we got right into the fixed-wing business. And now I would say about 60% of our work is helicopter related and 40% is fixed wing related, and pretty evenly dispersed around the world. In fact, I ran the numbers last night, and for the first time we broke 40% of our business is international.
Oh, fantastic! Congratulations.
40.5%.
So you had a strategy around moving to fixed wing, but building up to the point where you were able to do that and go after those suppliers. Was the transition into global a thought process that you had, or did it just evolve because of that other strategy?
It just evolved primarily because of the other strategy. And one of the assumptions that wasn't true was that the larger fixed-wing customers out there wouldn't take us serious. If we were the only ones that could save a few parts, we could have started a lot earlier there, and if we could do it over again, we probably would. And at the same time, we interviewed a number of folks that said, look, if you can't save at least $100,000 or more, we're not going to bother with you. It's interesting when you look at large organizations and where they'll actually focus, and it makes sense. If you've got $1 million opportunities, why not tackle those first? So we evolved fully into it, and now we're being taken serious by virtually all the major airlines around the world.
And yet so many aerospace companies that are within that supply chain stay domestic, whether it's here in the U.S. or around the world. And certainly one of the challenges that the state of Arizona has is that so many aerospace companies are not thinking strategically, are not thinking globally. How were you able to think that way, and why wouldn't others be able to do the same thing?
Yeah, for us, it's just a natural progression of thinking about growth. We have products and services on different types of aircraft. You can purchase lists to figure out what the markets are globally pretty easily, and they're really not that expensive, for virtually any industry out there. And so, pretty quickly we realized that the majority of the work is outside of the U.S. borders, and so if we want to significantly grow and spread ourselves out, then we have to do that. So we did.
Is it that other companies are getting pressure not to go international, or what would cause someone not to really think about those opportunities? Perhaps there's certain product types that wouldn't be as international as others. I mean, can you imagine that there may be some good and maybe not so good reasons why people are not thinking more internationally?
Yeah, we'd have to talk industry specific. Certain things maybe it's better to stay just locally or nationally. But for the most part, what I see out there is the perspective of the leadership team in these organizations. So, for example, if you're dealing with a couple of large customers and the work is just flowing in and you've got contracts lined up, I see a lot of them just sort of sitting there. It almost feels like a lifestyle approach to a company. Everything seems to be going well. I'm not going to rock the boat. Big difference with us and a number of other companies out there, and hopefully we can get to even more so they have this perspective, is that we are always looking to continually grow, just always looking for that. And if we want to keep the best and brightest employees that we have, which are the most valuable asset, we have to be growing to provide opportunities for them, or we're going to lose them, and we're going to continually have problems over time. So it's really that perspective. If you want to keep looking for more opportunities and you're going after it, in fact, the more comfortable you feel, I believe that's when you should probably feel the most uncomfortable. And what are you going to do to take advantage of it and keep it? I actually think it's harder to keep what you have once you've gotten to a certain level than it is to actually get there. So just something to think about.
The continuous improvement clearly continues to drive you. And at the end of the day, any pressure that you might receive within the supply chain to stay domestic or to stay limited to a certain product type, you've been able to overcome that pressure or any pressures related to that and ultimately really help support a better supply chain because you've provided value down and up the chain. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. And we've never had pressure to stay, at least external pressure to stay domestic. If there's any pressure to stay domestic, it's because you don't want to do something that's hard. And once you do it, it actually becomes pretty easy. Doing global business right now, it's like breathing for us. It's just normal. But in the early days, we're looking around, how do you do this? And it sure would be nice for anybody thinking about getting into it to have an organization they could go to learn all those lessons very quickly and get the support without having to reinvent the wheel, which we certainly did the first 10 years.
At what point did it become easy for you?
After 10 years of plowing through it.
Fantastic. A lot of the reason why we've created the Global Chamber is that it does take a while to be comfortable, right? You've got so many different moving parts. You're learning things across border. You've got distance. You've got logistics. You've got different suppliers. You've got partners that don't always work out in this whole selection process. So there's just so many moving parts, and the fact that it took you 10 years to become successful, or at least comfortable. You were successful all the way along, but in terms of 10 years to become really comfortable with it is, I think, a testimony to how difficult it is, and yet, what a great opportunity.
Well, what I think the Global Chamber offers is it's a place you can go to change how you think about it and change it quickly. Had we had that, we would probably be in the early days, the first 2 years, if we had access to something like the Global Chamber, we would probably be 2 to 3 times further ahead internationally in our total business than we are today. No question, in my view.
Appreciate that testimonial. Appreciate all that you're doing for the industry in the region, and thank you for your time today, Lee.
Thank you.